We're coming to you live from the Quicken Loans Studios. National mortgage lender Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, and mortgage confidently. A lot going on in this year's NFL offseason. We have rule changes, NFL draft talk with the draft coming up later on in the month, and then also speculation about two superstars. Let's talk to the perfect man to chat some NFL with, and that, of course, is Charles Davis from the NFL on Fox and NFL Network. Charles, appreciate you taking a few minutes. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Zach. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on, as always. Let's get right to it with what was one of the biggest stories of the week, and that was the rule change in the National Football League. You can no longer lower your head on hits, and it could possibly result in an automatic ejection. When you heard this rule, I know there's still more details to come from it, but what was your initial reaction?
Well, I thought we had taken care of that, frankly, Zach. I mean, I thought that was addressed about 3-4 seasons ago, wasn't it? Especially when we're talking about offensive guys. Because, for so long, the defensive guys have complained, well, all the rules are against us, and the offensive guys can run us over, do whatever they want with their helmets. And then they start talking about, okay, there's a 2-3-part criteria towards what you can do and what you can't do where the helmet gets involved. And now when you add this to it, I'm not one to criticize anything that we're going to do to try to make the game safer. My question, I think, centers in on what a lot of the guys are already asking: how will it be officiated? Because if we're going to get the catch rule so-called right or closer to correct, and we're going to move the game along, are we going to slow the game down further with this? I think, I work with Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino at Fox Sports, and one of the things I think I saw Mike say is he doesn't believe we will see a ton of flags from this, but you'll see a lot of, what do the guys call it, a lot of getting the envelope when the league office sends you the fine come after Monday review of tape. So let's see how it goes before we totally panic. But I do know that pace of play is a big deal for the league. Safety is a bigger deal. They're going to err on the side of safety. That's great. I just hope that pace of play is not affected as well, because I think we have enough of that already with, I'm going to sound like an old codger, but sometimes the unintended consequence of the replay reviews is that we slow down the game. We take some of the spontaneity out of the celebrations for the players and the fans.
I think you make a lot of good points, because I've been to the last few Super Bowls, and when I talk on Radio Row, you hear all the stories about players that have had to deal with concussions, and they're frightening. So player safety is very much important, but the tricky situation for the NFL, because I do believe there will be a lot of confusion, maybe a little bit in the preseason and trickling over into weeks 1 and 2 of the regular season. Then we'll see how this is going to be officiated. But how does the NFL make these changes but not drastically change the product? Because we've seen a lot of players not necessarily like this rule that was passed last week.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think a lot of that is really the fear of the unknown about what you've already expressed. How will it be officiated? And the players, I get the sense that the players feel like we understand the safety aspect. I don't think anyone would argue that. No one in their right mind would. All right? It's kind of like whatever was going on in our country, if it affects people, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on politically, everyone cares. There's empathy. How we get to it is where the discussion comes into play. How is it, are we getting to it the way you think it should be or the way they think it should be? And that's what the players are wondering right now. How will I have to adjust my game? Because as we continue to take the head out of the game, which is the right thing to do to try and make it safer, we know the game will never be 100% safe. It's not that type of a game. We know the risks that are involved. That's why the guys are playing it. They get it, but they're willing to do those things and take those risks. But how will it be officiated? Because I've had to do this already. What's the next step, and does that change the way I fundamentally play the game? That's what I think the guys are most worried about.
Do you feel like you now know what a catch is in the National Football League? A little bit of a silly question, but for so many years it's been such a controversy.
You're exactly right, and I don't think that we truly know until we see it put into action and it gets grooved again to where we're back to, yep, that's a catch or not a catch. Zach, let's be honest about the whole thing. When all of us get together at Thanksgiving and all of our different homes and functions and all those turkey bowls take place, we thought about what a catch was, right? I mean, that wasn't a catch, that was a catch, that wasn't a catch, and sometimes that would end the game, okay? But at the same time, most of the time, you had a pretty good idea of what a catch was. You may argue and go, yeah, that was a catch. That's what we have to get back to. If it looks like a catch, it feels like a catch, it's probably a catch. And truthfully, I think the Super Bowl jump-started us towards this season inadvertently. The Corey Clement catch, all during the season, Zach.
Wouldn't have been ruled a catch.
Exactly. That was incomplete.
I'll tell you, over the last few years, the things that have annoyed me the most with the National Football League, just in terms of on the field, is what is a catch, what isn't a catch, and then also pass interference, because I still think that is so inconsistent.
It is, and it's very difficult because I think pass interference for football is block charge in basketball. And we were, watching that during the Final Four, during March Madness. The block charge, they've tried to help it out with that half circle. Is the guy in there, not in there? But those calls are still very difficult. We saw the call, just in the game with Villanova and Kansas. And if the game hadn't been a 20-point game, that would have been vociferously argued. Go back to the Duke-Kansas game. Block charge late in the ball game. They called it a block, went against Duke. Ultimately helped decide the game, even though Duke had their chance at the end to win the thing. Still a very difficult call. But pass interference, I think, is a similar difficult call for the officials. Is it not? I know there was that big discussion to make it a spot foul or a 15-yarder like in college football. They ultimately decided not to do that. It'll be revisited again in another year or two, and we will keep revisiting it depending on the flurry of flags with that call on the field during the season.
Double dipping right now with Charles Davis right now on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Nice little basketball breakdown by you. That's some good stuff. But let's get to some of these superstars. It seems like it's a new story with Gronk each and every day. There's a new story with Odell Beckham. I still believe Odell's going to be on the Giants and Gronk will be on the Patriots, and maybe they'll both have new contracts. How do you break down the Odell Beckham Jr. and Rob Gronkowski situation?
Well, let's start with OBJ. And I do believe, like you, that ultimately he will be with the Giants. I'm just frankly surprised about the amount of chatter out of the Giants camp. And it's not a criticism. It's just a surprise.
Maybe they think that's how they have to send the message, though. Maybe he has to grow up that way. They have to do it publicly now. Maybe,
and it's a brand new regime, save the owners. We've heard from Mr. Mayer about it. We've heard from Coach Gettleman, the GM, about it. We've heard from Pat Shurmur about it. And in none of the cases did you hear them say unequivocally that we expect him to be here. Even Pat Shurmur said he's on the team for now. That almost sounds like, as you pointed out, that they got together as a group and said this is how we're going to address it with him. But he's such a great player, and I think that when Coach Gettleman talks about you don't get rid of talent, he's speaking from the heart on that one. I think he's probably telling ownership, why don't you just let us have a shot at him, please? Let Pat Shurmur and the crew have a shot. We'll try and, send the messages you want. It helps in the contract negotiations, all those things. But ultimately, you don't just let a guy like that walk without us taking a chance to see if maybe we can make this thing work. And I think that's how it'll break down. With Gronk, if indeed he is feeling the effects of the injuries, the multiple surgeries, I would just tell everyone at home who can hear our voices that if you've ever had one surgery, think about how that felt and think about your recovery trying to get back. I know recovery is different for a professional because that's their job, and they will do 24/7 to get these guys back, but it still hurts, right? You still got cut open. They still did some work in there. It still hurts to heal and to make your way back. Yes, you're getting better rehab and better recovery. I'm not arguing that by any stretch. But at the same time, we're not recovering to go run into people again, right? So that's a different deal. And think of the number he's had. And remember, the reason he was a second-round pick in the first place was he had a bad back coming out of college. So you're dealing with a lot of things with Gronk, and think about the success he's had. He's won Super Bowls. He's been all-pro. He's done all the things that you would want to do in your career. At a certain point, even a guy like Gronk may wake up and go, I don't know if I feel like doing this anymore. And that's why we're having this conversation right now. I keep hearing this stuff about the Patriots trading him, doing this, doing that. I'm of the opinion that I don't see that happening either. Now, I could be way wrong on that one. If anyone would do it, it'd be the Patriots, because I think the only guy that they would never treat in a manner, in a so-called common player manner, is Tom Brady. After that, everyone else is kind of up for grabs because that's part of the reason they've stayed so relevant. They get rid of guys earlier rather than later, and they keep replenishing the stock. Remember when they traded Richard Seymour?
Yeah, to the Raiders.
Remember that? I mean, we were all like, what?
It was out of nowhere right before the season started.
Right before the season. We're like, what? Well, did Richard Seymour ever play at that high level again?
No, Belichick was right on that one. I think Gronk's a little bit different situation, though.
I agree with you totally. But at the same time, they would be the ones to explore it. Somewhere, I'm going to bring baseball in now. Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Branch Rickey, the great GM, the Mahatma, as they called him. Remember what his mantra was about great players? Better to get rid of them a year too early rather than a year too late. And the Patriots have been subscribing to that theory forever. It's worked quite well for them. So I'm with you. I don't think they're doing that with Gronk. I do think that ultimately Gronk will want to play. And the last part is, don't forget, we're probably going to have a horse named Gronkowski in the Kentucky Derby coming up. So we need to check all the boxes on this bad boy.
You're unbelievable. Talking to Charles Davis right now, NFL on Fox, NFL Network. These 5 quarterbacks in the draft that everyone's talking about, Darnold, Rosen, Mayfield, Jackson, Allen, how do you rank those 5 for me?
Boy, that's a tough one for me. It's very, very difficult. My personal favorite is Mayfield. Part of that is I covered him during his college days before I went back to the NFL. I saw him his first season at Texas Tech when he started as a walk-on after 3 weeks of camp. Remember, he didn't go there in the spring like a lot of these young quarterbacks do. He walked on in August and won the starting job game 1 and took it from there. And then, of course, success at Oklahoma. Yes, there's certain things off-field, and when we say off-field, for me it's much more he has that chip on his shoulder for people who have doubted him. All I've ever said is don't turn it into a boulder and have to carry around extra weight. The chip is enough. That gives you the edge you need. But don't fight with, guys like us in the media and, this guy said this bad about me and I got to respond to him. And great quarterbacks don't respond to us. They're regal. They are royalty. They are above us. They may hear what we say, but they never let us know it. Right? You ever hear Tom Brady get into a Twitter war? Drew Brees? Aaron Rodgers,
Never.
Any of those guys, they don't because they're above us, right? They look down at us. We're just minions, Zach. You know that. And that's what the great quarterbacks do. That's all Baker needs to do. Look, Rosen's the best thrower overall out of the group. Darnold is a magical player. He's a guy who creates things when things aren't there and has plenty of arm and can do all the things you're looking for. Josh Allen has the biggest, baddest arm in the whole draft, but you worry about footwork and accuracy. And in the NFL, if you don't have that down pat, it doesn't get better in the NFL. Okay, whatever you were in college, you don't have to become appreciably more accurate in the NFL because the windows are smaller and the D-backs are quicker. And then Lamar Jackson is your ultimate wild card. What imaginative offensive coordinator, head coach, play caller, system would take him and find a way to make best use of his skills. So if you had me ranking them, Mayfield's my guy at the top because I have a personal bias towards it. Darnold, I think, is going to be the first off the board. Then it's going to be an interesting deal. How do people judge Rosen and his leadership skills and the rumors? Does he get along with people? Does he not? Don't forget his medical history, number of concussions and other injuries along the way. But as far as pure thrower, he's that guy. And Josh Allen, he's going to be a little bit of a project. But, boy, when you see him throw it 80 yards downfield without any apparent effort, he's probably a project you want to take on. And so it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch and see how these guys fall and come off the board. And truthfully, Zach, if things hold as they are right now, 1 Cleveland, 2 Giants, 3 Jets, we could have quarterbacks legitimately come off the board 1, 2, 3. We really could.
And that's the most compelling thing to me because I could see it going 3 quarterbacks or maybe Saquon Barkley fits in there or Chubb.
Yes.
So it's so interesting. Everyone talks about Saquon Barkley. If you're the Browns, I guess your ideal scenario is you get Darnold at 1 and then Barkley at 4 and you have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3.
Right.
But when you look at Barkley, everyone thinks he's a Sherlock, going to be unbelievable in the National Football League. Is there any questions on him when you look at his tape?
He's a running back. That's your only question, Zach. And runners, they take a pounding, they take a ding. They're 1 cut away from being from an injury that they can't play for the season. Kajana Carter comes immediately to mind. another Penn State guy who was the number one pick in the entire draft and was never the same after that. Now, we've come a long way, medical science and blah, blah, blah. What helps Saquon to me, because I think that his game fits everything you're looking for. He can run it. He can run it inside. He can run it to the perimeter. He has excellent vision. He will drop a shoulder and finish runs. Can he catch the ball? Oh, yes. It's not just screens and checkdowns. You can split him out, and he can run routes as a mini receiver. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but very few people are. McCaffrey was the best route runner, receiver, or running back the year he came out. So he's just a different animal. But can Barkley do those things that you're looking for? Of course he can. You saw him return kicks. Now, he's probably likely going to return kicks in the NFL. He's too big of a commodity. But he does that for you. He will pass protect. That's a big deal about getting a runner on the field early in the NFL since we throw the ball first. So there's nothing he can't do. But people have always been shy in recent years about taking runners so high. But what's helped him? Todd Gurley went at 11. He's played pretty darn well in his career, especially now that McVay's taken over, right? Ezekiel Elliott went at 4. Transformed Dallas his first year as a rookie. Leonard Fournette went at 4 last year, helped run them to an AFC championship game. McCaffrey went at 8 last year. Did everything you're looking for. Probably wants to see if he wants to run the ball a little bit more, but that's up to Carolina, I think. They used him more as a receiver last year. So those guys have helped because they've all had success, and it's made it easier to take a runner that much higher nowadays. If those guys hadn't had that success, we're still talking about, don't get a runner that early. You can get the same guy in the second round. I don't believe you can get the same guy, but you can get similar players because this is a big year for runners, Zach.
Last one for Charles Davis, who joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. I know fit is such a big thing where these players end up, but just based on talent, give me your 5 players that we're going to be talking about in 5 years as the 5 best players from this draft that you have to look ahead.
Wow. You really put me on the spot, didn't you?
That's what we do here.
Yes, you do it well. I'm not sure I'll be able to fulfill everything you're looking for, but I'm going to tell you I think Barkley 5 years from now we'll be talking about him as one of the better players in the league. I really do. I think he's got everything that you're looking for. I think there's a cornerback that people aren't talking about as much, but I think will go in the first round, and I think he's going to be a heck of a player, and his name is Jair Alexander out of the University of Louisville. I think he's terrific, absolutely terrific. I think there's a wide receiver named DJ Moore out of Maryland that I'm liking a lot, and I've talked to a couple of people recently that are liking him better than Calvin Ridley out of Alabama. Moore, is he more of a slot? Is he more of an outside guy? Did both at Maryland, but he is really rising in the minds of people. Bradley Chubb is going to be an interesting phenomenon because you remember when Joey Bosa came out, there was a lot of discussion with Bosa about him being technically proficient, a manhandling guy at the point of attack, but is he twitchy enough? Right, that's one of our most recent buzzwords. Is he twitchy enough to get you double-digit sacks every year? The answer turned out to be not only is he twitchy, but he's brute force strong who can get everything he wants. Chubb, we're looking at and saying, we think that he can do all of those things, hold the point of attack and all that. We expect him to get those kinds of numbers. He's under a little bit more pressure. Bosa got it done. We'll see if Chubb gets it done. It's going to be an interesting deal, especially when you think about the Giants, because the Giants franchise is built on defense first. And Dave Gettleman, he likes big people who can play. Chubb's going to be a strong discussion at number 2, Zach.
Well, Charles, great stuff. You covered a lot of hoops, a lot of NFL, baseball. Next time, maybe we'll talk some cricket with you. We appreciate it, Charles.
Yeah, that sounds good. And don't forget, we might have to put some money down on Gronkowski in the Derby because that horse is not qualified.
You got it, Charles. Talk soon, all right?
Be good now.